Okay, we are going live.
Sweet. Yep, I see you live.
Sweet. Oh, okay. Perfect. All right. Let me get my little mute thing going here, and then I think we'll be ready. All right. Sounds good. Cool. All right. All set?
All set.
All right. Welcome to episode 23 of the TCCG Roundtable. We're your hosts, Dragonrider and RonMexico. How's it going?
Hey, it's going great. How are you doing today?
I am doing pretty well. I am excited that we get to talk about how to play another game because they finally, spring has come. We got the rules for Disney Lorcana. Yay!
Surprise!
So,
Totally planned. Totally planned.
yeah. Whoops. Um, so yeah, we will be talking about Disney Lorcana and some of the rules, making some comparisons, to other card games, some similarities, and I feel like we, almost every week, like right, we talk about this kind of stuff, like how does this compare? But then here's the similar thing here, but then here's the similar thing from that game, and then just how each card game makes differences and makes things different. So we'll be talking about that. So pretty excited for that. Which I will say is a lot more than my Hearthstone ladder experience has been because boo, it makes me feel like I'm so bad at that game right now.
Ups and
Been sad.
downs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The meta shifts, and if you like to mix it up with a variety of things, sometimes that leads to a big struggle when there's just something that rises to the top and everyone's kind of jamming it en masse. And if you're like, oh, let me try this or try that or try a new thing, then you run into a brick wall sometimes.
Yeah, and that brick wall right now is seeming to be any deck that I face because it's just not going well, no matter what. So it's been a rough month on ladder for me for Hearthstone. So
I hear you.
but I think, like you said, the change up of the meta plus like a couple of decks that it's like if you're not playing that deck or like the counters, which are there really maybe a little bit, but or if you're not playing the like top couple of decks also very well, you're gonna probably be struggling, and that's kind of the point that I'm at right now. So. And I'm still in Diamond 5, which for me, this is very late in the month to still be Diamond 5 and not hit Legend. So I think I'm also hitting a bunch of the people who are like, oh, I'm just gonna play whatever and like experiment with stuff. And when I'm not good against that, like that's not helping either.
Yeah, just in this wild west of like anything goes, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna try to anticipate what they're doing, and then it's just some new like out of left field thing, and you're blindsided. Yeah, I get that. It'll happen. Just give it a bit more time. I
Yeah.
trust you'll navigate the remainder of the month well enough to get to where you want to be.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Funny enough though, talking about this did remind me of something that I forgot to put. I I hope you're aware, Ron. There's a Masters tour this weekend that you please mention in the competitive and organized play because I somehow did not put that in the notes. So yay, go me. But let's go ahead and jump into our news segment. First, here we have, I guess Hearthstone, still doing some stuff, but did we announce on the show that I got accepted into the I can't remember. I got accepted into the Hearthstone creator program. I
Hell
think we
yeah.
did, but if
I
not, if I
I
didn't mention it.
believe we did, but a
Okay.
lot has happened in the last
Yes.
week, and And we've
Yeah.
had multiple other conversations outside of this show to where I'm not 100% sure, but I'm
I know, right?
pretty sure. I'm like 90% sure.
Oh,
We mentioned it on the show last week, and it's really
yeah.
awesome news.
Yes, yes. Well, what's even more awesome, I feel like, is that as a community, we also got news that our good friend and podcast extraordinaire, Ridiculous Hat, who does a ton of different stuff in the community, has just announced in the last, what, like 2 days, that he has accepted a position as associate community manager for Hearthstone. So, congratulations to Ridiculous Hat. That is amazing. And as a recent addition to the creator program, I'm excited because I'm like, yay, I'll get to still work with Hat. Awesome. So yeah, definitely pretty. I mean, it's like good and bad news, right? I mean, it's great. I think for the community at large, for the Hearthstone team, and for people who still get to communicate with Ridiculous Hat. But it's also a little bit sad for all of the audience and people who really enjoyed hearing him on all of the numerous podcasts that he did, because he will no longer be able to be on those Hearthstone podcasts.
Absolutely. It's a bit bittersweet, but of course, just incredible news for the Hearthstone community at large. Such an amazing thing to happen to a very well-deserving person. I mean, Ridiculous Hat has been such a positive force in the Hearthstone community for such a long time, and it's just so well earned, so well deserved. And it's very exciting to see him get this official position within Blizzard, and it's going to be really cool to see what happens from there and watch how he develops in that role. But you do miss out on, oh, okay, well, hat of like the million podcasts talking about Hearthstone, and there's big shoes to fill there. But
Yeah.
always a positive step and exciting to see that happen.
Yeah. I think maybe slightly selfishly, some of us in the podcast community are like, okay, well he's leaving, so like room for the rest of us to to grow and like get more audience, hopefully. But yeah, I mean we're definitely no replacing Hat, but we can certainly see who kind of tries to fill that role a little bit and what kind of comes out of that. But I am so happy for him, and I definitely think that there's going to be some amazing things that happen. I mean, Ridiculous Hat and Alkali Lake working together. I mean, as far as we know, unless she's moving on to something else, but as far as we know, that they're going to be doing that. So that seems like a pretty sweet team for the community.
Yeah, I think she confirmed that as well, that they're just going to be working closely together. There's no
Oh, okay. Whew.
change
All
in
right.
her role from what she's communicated. Just the team is adding more to upgrade to have more capabilities.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, in other card game news, Marvel Snap did just release a couple of days ago on April 18th their latest patch. And you and I were talking a little bit before we were recording. They also added Jeff. This season, the current season, is like focused on kind of the animals of the Marvel universe. So Jeff the shark now added, and he seems pretty strong, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jeff's got a very unique ability, which is pretty cool. Just the fact that, you can play that card in any location despite other effects stating the contrary, like you can't play this here. Well, Jeff says you can't stop me. Um, and that's kind of cool. The card's really cute too. Little, like adorable little shark. I am curious though, because like I don't know, I feel like they're running out of material fast. Like I don't know anything about Jeff or where Jeff came from, or sure, there's always going to be some precedent in Marvel. There was comics about it, I'm sure, but like I don't know. Um, there aren't that many like super recognizable things, right? And that's kind of what Marvel Snap banks on a lot of the time is, oh hey, these are like the super popular characters that you know if you're a fan of Marvel, but they're they're kind of going to be delving pretty soon into the realm of, and here's another random character that does this thing, and you know them, right? They were in this one episode of this one thing back in 1989. I don't know, something like
Yeah.
that. It'll be weird.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting too because I feel like Hearthstone was also very much like that in the early years, right? Where they kind of did the Sylvanas and Ragnaros and
Mhm.
the like very iconic characters of World of Warcraft. And even for the first couple of years, it was called Hearthstone Heroes of Warcraft. But then a few years in, then they ended up dropping that second part of the name and just became Hearthstone and not kind of like associated necessarily with Warcraft, even though they still do take like lore and characters and stuff. But
Mhm.
and over time they've done a little bit more to try to like add in their own characters and like make it Hearthstone that's kind of an adaptation of World of Warcraft in a way and not as much just like copy paste but in card form. So I feel like Marvel Snap will probably have to do something similar or head in that direction, especially if they're doing like these different, the characters and these themed seasons that change every month. Like, yeah, like you said, they're going to start to run out of stuff very, very fast if they
Yep.
don't kind of start adapting things a little differently or kind of creating, alterations or, their own adaptations to stuff.
They're dropping new cards like all the time, and I thought it was really cool that Hearthstone, for instance, did their own like original characters and this whole like um you know design team created new themes and storylines with brand new characters that they introduced. It's a lot harder to do probably for Marvel Snap, like you
Yeah.
can't just come up with random things on the fly and be like,
Yeah.
this is also now a Marvel property. Like, I don't know, that
hmm
seems like a tough sell. But it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on and watch. It definitely had a lot of early momentum. Still a hugely popular game, and I'm sure it will be fine. But how much of its um, fanfare kind of falls behind when they run out of all the really big draw characters, and now it's just throwing random things at a wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of curious too because at least I mean there probably is still like trademark and that kind of stuff, but you know Blizzard has control of World of Warcraft and Hearthstone,
Mm.
whereas Second Dinner is the one doing the game design, and yeah, they probably have to follow a lot of like the like regulations and probably a lot of really strict rules involving Marvel and the use of its, characters and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see what they will be allowed to do or not do. So,
Definitely.
but some other exciting news is March of the Machine for Magic the Gathering has released today, April 21st, Friday, April 21st. So, pretty exciting. I know we kind of mentioned that previously. So, yeah, that is releasing today. And
More
more
new
game.
stuff.
Yeah,
It's the
just
season still. We've
always.
been talking about it
Always.
since like what, mid-March. Just hit the ground running.
Yeah. Yeah. Feels like just so much all the time. But that just doesn't stop. And not only just at expansions and sets for card games, but entirely new card games like Battle Spirit Saga that is officially launching next weekend, April 28th.
Whew.
Wow, it's getting so close now. I can't believe it.
1 week to go.
Yeah. That is all that I've got right now for our news. What do you have, Ron, for the competitive play?
So, competitive and organized play. We'll start with Hearthstone, since it is one of our most frequently discussed topics. Hearthstone Masters Tour Spring Championship is starting this weekend, officially tomorrow, at the time of recording at least. We are going to be seeing them start on Saturday, April 22nd, and run through Sunday, April 23rd. It is your typical format that you are used to if you follow any Hearthstone major events, with all contestants bringing 4 different decks, playing a best of 5 series conquest. So you have to win with each of your decks that was not banned. Each player, of course, gets a ban. The prize pool is going to be $50,000, and we have a grand total of 16 players participating. So this is like an insanely stacked field. Um, with the changes to the competitive scene, there are much fewer players. Previous Masters tours, I think, had more than like 400 people playing in them, something to that end. I can't remember exactly what it was, but a dramatic drop from, hundreds of players to just 16. All of them are extremely good, and it's going to be pretty exciting to see who comes out on top. And Hearthstone did come back finally to Twitch, so this should be broadcast on Twitch all weekend. And we're hoping to see, an increase in viewership, a lot different than what it had been when Hearthstone was exclusively being streamed on YouTube for its official events. So that's going to be pretty exciting to see the change.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I think, is it still being streamed? It's being streamed on both, right?
Oh, I think you're right. Yeah, I think they are
Yeah,
also streaming on YouTube.
yeah. But with the bringing it back to Twitch, there's also the Twitch drops that will be available. So if you watch for certain, I think it's like 2 hours, then 4 hours. At least that's what it usually is. You can earn yourself a couple of new Festival of Legends card packs. So just as long as your Twitch and your Blizzard accounts are linked and connected, then you should be able to watch and earn some packs.
Absolutely. Um, and then as far as other competitive and organized play games that we're looking at, just around the sphere, Magic has an upcoming event from May 5th through the 7th, and that is MagicCon Minneapolis. We are also going to be seeing the next Yu-Gi-Oh! Championship Series event taking place in Cancun, Mexico on September 16th through the 17th. Um, Legends of Runeterra has published an article with feedback and future changes following last weekend's Runeterra Open. And for Flesh and Blood, the first of the 2 Pro Tours is happening with Pro Tour Baltimore, and that is April 27th through the 30th. So also happening in just about a week. Still, on that breakneck pace of so many different things all happening at once in multiple different games.
Yeah. It's so hard to keep up with sometimes. It's like, especially when you see multiple events. I can't remember exactly when it was, but it was one of those launches, or it was like I had like 3 different card game tournament streams open, and I was like, why are they all happening in the same weekend?
Yeah.
Like trying to follow, it was like a Hearthstone thing, and then like Legends of Runeterra, and then like Magic, and I'm like, they're all happening in the same weekend. I can't watch all of this. And then you try to watch like the Pokemon TCG and the VGC stuff goes on at the same time, and you're just like, there's so many things. It's great if you love watching, the competitive stuff. You love watching like the esports, but dang, sometimes it's hard when you're like, but I do want to watch all of
Yep.
those,
Yep.
and they're all at the
Tough
same
to
time.
tough to pull that off. It's like, I don't
Yeah.
know, it's like playing multiple people in chess at the same time or something crazy. Like Bobby Fischer or some other famous like chess pro doing multiple things. Like unless you're a very, very special different person, you really have to pick and choose. You can't just like focus on all of them as much as you might want to.
Yeah, that's been a very, very hard lesson that I've been having to learn myself because I am not that good. Surprise everybody, but not quite that good. So yeah, I want to be, but yeah, those people are just leaps and bounds. I mean, I don't know how some of those people do it. Even like
Yeah,
putting a ton of time in, I'm like, there's something else. But Ron, are you ready to talk about some Disney Lorcana rules?
absolutely. We've been waiting. Um,
Yeah.
I remember talking with Jared from Citizens of Lorcana just recently, and it was totally up in the air. He's like, eventually we're gonna get some news about how we play this game, but we don't know when. Well, it happened. It finally happened, and now
That's
we know.
right. Yes. Yes. So here you can find the official Lorcana how to play rules on the website disneylorcana.com. So here they have like a how to play section. There's 8 little videos. They are all very short. I mean, each one is like, you know, 40 seconds to like 2 minutes, 20 seconds. So they're not very long at all. But they did kind of split these up into the different segments and then do like a little recap at the end. But some of the things that we want to talk about here is just kind of some of the like basics. I mean, a lot of these still kind of are basics. I believe on on their Twitter page, I saw a post about that this is kind of more geared towards people who might be newer to card games. So for people who are like veterans of card games or who really, are already kind of established in card games and understand that stuff, they're going to be doing something a little bit more with that coming. But these videos here, these real short, simple videos, are definitely more geared towards maybe newcomers to card games. Like I will say, the setting up a game, you know, if you're listening to this show, you're probably already familiar with card games. The setting up a game video, like they even tell you like flip a coin or decide who's going first. Like that's kind of the level that, they're explaining at. So they give you like 2 different ways of how to pick who's going first. So very kind of entry level, which is great, right? There's definitely, I think, a place for that. Maybe for someone like us, we're like, oh, okay, cool. Like I don't need to be told to maybe like flip a
I,
coin and figure
I
out
just
who
want to
goes
see
first.
the
It's fine.
infinite loop. I just want to see, in order to determine who goes first play a game of Lorcana, and the winner goes first in your game of Lorcana.
That would be hilarious. That would be great. Um, so I guess starting with some of the basics, the kind of premise of the Lorcana is that this is a deck building style trading card game. So players will be able to build their decks however they want. So, unlike what we just talked about several weeks ago when we opened up all of those kind of pre-built decks, right? That you take 2 half decks, put them together, and kind of scan the QR code. This is more like Magic or Hearthstone, where you build your deck. Decks are 60 cards, and I thought when I first heard that, okay, 60 cards. Well, that's obviously a bigger deck. That's more like Magic, right? So maybe you have to put in, or Pokemon, maybe even where like, do you have to put in energy or do you have to put in like lands or something to use your cards? No. Interestingly, the mechanic basically for they call it ink. So you actually use some of your cards to create that. Now, Flesh and Blood does something very similar, where you also kind of your cards end up becoming your mana, your energy source. So for Lorcana, some of the cards will have kind of like a gold like circle around their cost up in the top left corner. Now, those cards you can use to put into your inkwell, is what they're calling it, and that becomes essentially like when you play your land or energy in Magic. Um, Now, how many you have, it doesn't matter what the cost of the card is. You show it to your opponent, and then you put it face down into your inkwell, and basically each card just counts as one. So, if you have 3 cards in there, you have 3 ink to use to play cards. And then again, in that top left corner is the cost. Now, I'm kind of curious. I want to like hear your thoughts on just that concept of like using your cards in that way as your mana source.
It's I mean, it's an interesting different approach that is similar in some ways to like the traditional type things where you have some kind of mana pool, and then it is its own little spin where it's like, hey, you don't have to necessarily like have like draw specifically your like mana things to do the things that you want to do. um I always like when there's just a different style, and it will take some adjusting for people who are familiar with other card games and things. But overall, it's going to be something like it seems pretty clear too that they've made it very beginner friendly. Um, so this is like a good way to just kind of ease into how to how to play card games in general even. And I like the mechanic. I think it's going to be easy to learn and pick up and get used to.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's in a way it's a little bit more simple than like energy for Pokemon or land for Magic, where in those, if you have, let's say you're not playing a monocolored deck, right? In those, if you're going to play 2 or more, you're going to have to use, like for lands, right? You're going to have to put forest and swamp into your deck. Well, then you have to figure out how many of those do I need? How many of each of those do I need? I was bad at that, I will say, especially when I did drafts. And then I was like, okay, like there's kind of a guideline, people are like, here's like the, ideal number. But I swear, every time I tried doing that, it was always like, you'd really hit that RNG of like, well, I just drew all land this game. Or the next game, you'd be like, I drew no land. So, yay. Okay, this is great.
Yeah.
But this does seem more flexible where you're going to be using the cards that you're already like building your deck with. So, I mean, you might still have to kind of look a little bit and just make sure that you are kind of putting enough of those cards that have the little gold ring in the, around the cost, that you'll be able to draw some of those throughout the game. But it's not as, I think, like intricate or in depth, and it's not quite as demanding as like putting in land or energy. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it definitely seems more geared towards beginners. I agree.
I gotta say, the experience of I never drew a land in this game is something that made me immediately interested in Hearthstone compared to Magic. Like I played some Magic a lot of years ago, never got into it like heavily, but I played it. I enjoyed the game. I thought it was fun, and the absolute most frustrating aspect to me was not being able to control like having enough mana. You could have as many land cards as you want. If you don't draw them, then well, you're out of luck. And I just loved the fact that Hearthstone was like, yeah, you don't need to worry about that. You just get one more each turn. I'm like, oh my god. So that was like an appeal for me for Hearthstone. But it's cool that Disney Lorcana has its own different spin on like ways to access your resources to play the game.
Yeah, yeah. And for me, like I'm really interested in the aspect of that it's just like one for one. So right, if
Mhm.
you play the one like on the screen here, if you're watching one of our live, or if you're watching a VOD, you can see it kind of shows the Simba card, Simba Returned King. In that top left, you kind of see that like golden circle around the cost. It costs 7 to play it, but you could show that to your opponent from your hand and then put it face down into your inkwell, and then that just costs as 1 like so you could play a 1 cost card after that. Um, like I mentioned, Flesh and Blood has a kind of similar mechanic. You have to use your cards as well for the resource, but the I think a little bit slightly more like complicated version where those cards you get 1, 2, or 3 depending on like what it is that you're playing and putting into your like trash pile. Whereas this is just like I said, that 1 for 1, so it makes it pretty easy and straightforward. So that's pretty great. So that's how you play your card. That's kind of the mana, the source resource to use to play the cards, and you can play. It seems like any number of cards in your turn, as long as you have the resource, the ink to do that. Now they are calling it to use an effect. You turn the card sideways, and they're calling that exerting. I have a feeling most people will still just call that tapping
Oh yeah,
because
that's a
that's
tap.
what it's that's what it's
That's
come
definitely a
from in
tap.
Magic. So yeah, it's turning cards sideways. Here you go. Is the video number 3 video on their site, turning cards. Yeah, it's tapping it just to signify that you had used that card.
But it'll be fun to like later in, I don't know, different card game like crossovers, just where people are like, oh, I started playing this card game or that card game. Like at some point in the future, if someone's maybe like playing Magic against someone else and they tap, they might say that they're gonna exert their card, and then the other person's like, oh, you started playing Lorcana, didn't you? That's where your first card game was. And they were like, oh yeah, you got me. But I love
Yes.
that. I love that kind of like the little different quirks. You notice
Yeah.
it even in like Hearthstone, people from Magic who will call minions like creatures or something, you know?
Yep. That's how I always know. I'm like, I think we did that during our Amber Flight review for the
Yeah.
Festival of Legends set, and Flying Kraken was like, yeah, and our creatures and this creature, and I was like, I can tell. I mean, like I
Yep.
knew that he had a Magic history, but I was like, I could just tell that you started with Magic.
Yeah. Keep an eye out in a few years for all of the Lorcana players that branch out into other card games and they start talking about how they're gonna exert this or exert that.
Yes. So another thing is that they are, I guess, kind of again setting up like Magic in a way. The kind of order of operations, I'll say, for the start of your turn, they are calling it ready, set, draw. So that is you ready your cards, which is untapping or unexerting. Well, you exert them, so you tap them sideways, you ready them, and you put them, right way up. And then you set any cards. I guess I should say. So the way that they kind of have this set is your cards that are in play are kind of above, just on the board. And then underneath those, you have your face down cards in your inkwell that count as your ink. That's, again, your resource to play your cards. And they have kind of talked in the videos about putting cards that you might have played like a creature. If you play a creature, you put that just kind of right above your inkwell cards, but not all the way into play because they have summoning sickness. They don't call it that, but that's essentially what it is. You can't use their abilities on the turn that those come into play. If you use like an item, or an instant kind of card, then you can use those the turn that they come into play, but the like creatures you can't. So the ready, set, draw thing is you ready your cards, which is untapping. The set is you set cards up from slightly off to, yeah, I guess in line with the other cards to signify that they can be played, and then you draw a card, and then you can start your turn. So in Magic, it's like untap, upkeep, draw is kind of the
Yeah.
phrasing there. At least the old school. I don't know. Probably now there's like 18 things that you got to say at the beginning. I don't know, uh, but so yeah, it kind of has that similar, just you know, get everything ready for your turn and then draw, and then you can start your turn. Essentially, is the kind of process there.
Yeah, it's always good when there are clearly defined mechanics of that because like it's a classic in card games too where you can't really play something and have it immediately do like a powerful effect unless there's some kind of cost to do that. But having those defined steps means that there can also be cards printed that say you can bypass certain defined steps or you can do this at this time because this card's special ability or whatnot. That's always kind of cool just to have that flexibility. But in general, it's not like everything can just have charge. For instance, if you're going to use a Hearthstone keyword, it's like
Yeah,
that. It
yeah,
wouldn't be very fair. Games wouldn't go very well. It's like, oh, I went first, so I play all of these things, and you don't get to respond, and now I win.
yeah. Exactly. There is some like start of turn character abilities. So those also would happen, at that in the kind of set part of the phase. Like, you ready all your cards by turning them upright and then set any cards, to be played and check for any, start of turn of effects. And then you draw. So, yeah, pretty interesting there. Now, the characters, that's what they're calling them, not creatures, not minions, characters is what
Of
these are.
course.
So yes, the characters cannot use their abilities when they come into play. Except like essentially summoning sickness. But the really kind of interesting thing here is that the characters, you don't really necessarily attack. Now, this is kind of different. So you can use, right, you tap, you exert the character card, and then if it has an ability, you can use an ability. Or if you do want to attack, it's very similar to like Hearthstone, where you get to pick which opponent's thing you are kind of attacking into. They don't call it attacking, it's something else. I can't remember now. But you
Is
can
it
only
questing or challenging?
challenging.
Challenging? I think
Yes.
challenging.
Yes, correct. Thank you. So you can challenge another character, but from the videos, it looked like you can only challenge other characters that are also exerted, that are tapped. So there is a strategy they mention in one of the kind of later videos where if you don't want, maybe you need to use something next turn, you don't want your opponent to have a chance to challenge your characters, don't use their ability, and it's not exerted, so it's not tapped, and then they can't challenge that character.
Mhm. And thus the complexity deepens.
That's right. But that's kind of interesting because it's not like Legends of Runeterra or Pokemon or Magic where you just say this is attacking and then your opponent gets to pick which thing is going to block or not. Because I guess we should also mention in Lorcana there's not a life total either. So the kind of way to win the game is by getting to what they're calling lore. You get lore points. So some of the characters, when you exert them, like I'm looking at Aurora on the screen there, there's kind of on the lower left or on the lower right of the card, they have like two little lore symbols. So if you exert Aurora and, you know, you are using your questing is what they're calling it, as you mentioned. You are questing for that lore. So you would exert that, you tap it, and then she has two of those symbols, so you get two lore. But now Aurora is exerted, So your opponent might have a chance to challenge that on their turn and try to take Aurora out so that you can't build up that lore.
Yeah, right on brand for Disney. Nobody's dying right in a game between something they want to be family friendly and open to kids. It's not like my character is going to attack your character and kill you. They want it to be just a different angle, but it's still essentially like win conditions. They just phrase it in a different way, and the way that you obtain the win condition is different. And I think it works. It works well for them.
Yeah, yeah. And there's also not a trash pile. They call it, like, if a character does, get challenged and it loses, it is banished. Which, yes, very also on brand. it's
There
banished.
you go.
It's not dead. It's not
Yeah.
killed. It's not, yeah. So, yeah, pretty great there. They do have abilities, which are the different kind of keywords, mechanics on the cards, and again, they do have 3 different types of cards. They have the characters, they have items, and then I believe, are they spells? What do they call the third one? This is also the hard thing when you start to get like so many card games. You're like, I'm just gonna mix up all of these names for things.
Yeah. I wasn't sure when I was watching the video. I wasn't sure if it was because I didn't get a chance to go super in depth, but they showed a sinister plot and a sweep and a show me, and I didn't know if that was like specific keywords for the cards themselves or overall keywords that every card has.
Yeah, I mean, but essentially, there's 3 types of cards. You have your characters, you have items, and then you have they're basically like spells. They're instants. They're one-time use things is what they are. The items stay on the board just like the characters, and then you can use their abilities. The kind of different thing with the items, though, is even though they are on the board, just like the characters, you can use those abilities the turn that you play them. So if you play an item out, you can use that ability that same turn if you have the cost or whatever it is that you might need to use that ability. But the characters cannot use any abilities or do any like questing for lore the turn they come out. So
Sort of like minions and spells type of things,
yeah, exactly.
just a different
Uh,
way.
yeah, I would say the items are probably like auras or enchantments, more like enchantments in Magic, like kind of like locations in Hearthstone. They just kind of stay out on the board until you use that effect.
Absolutely. It's pretty cool. I like what they did with this, and I like that they have just it's still very, very familiar with any kind of like history of playing card games. There's just so many different parallels, but they've got their own spin. It'll be pretty interesting to see how the game develops.
Yeah, yeah. And they did also say, and this probably, again, just continues to lean into the making it a little bit more simple. We did talk about this with Jared a couple weeks ago, Jared from Citizens of Lorcana, when he joined us. When you are creating your deck, you'll only be able to put 2, they're called inks, so these are like the colors, right? Red and they have like, amethyst is the, and ruby. It's like red and purple. Okay. But you can only put 2 of those in a deck. Not like Magic, where in Magic you could build all 5 colors into one deck if you really wanted to. But this is limited to the 2 different ink types in one deck. So yeah, kind of really, again, like leaning into that more kind of simplistic, beginner friendly, or like an introductory kind of card game, which is pretty cool. I'm very curious to see what kinds of stuff they do for organized play and all of that as well, because I still think that I think just with card games in general, even if it does seem simplistic, there's still going to be a lot of strategy and in-depth things like the more you go, especially when you start doing like tournaments, right? Competitive play. If people are sharing deck lists, you're going to start getting into that like meta and strategies of that kind of stuff. So the strategy will start to, deepen a bit like as you get kind of more competitive with it and as more people check it out.
Yeah, and I wonder if they will wind up even developing the game further to the point that they'll remove those restrictions. Like, once it's established and people are familiar with the restrictions, there's this design space there to still like do something different and branch out and make it to where, hey, okay, you know, at your own risk, it might be a bad idea to use like all of these things together, but you could try it. That might be a thing they get to later. Just be cool to keep an eye on it and see how things go over time.
Yeah. Or maybe over time they do some sort of different formats where you can mess around with that too.
Oh yeah.
That's another thing that I'm sure even like we kind of talked earlier about with Marvel Snap, right? How like Marvel Snap is still in that early stage, so like maybe in the future they'll start just doing like variations of the kind of characters, right? That's like, oh, we've kind of seen that even in Hearthstone. Right, like, oh, you have Ragnaros, but then in a later set you have Ragnaros the Light Lord. It's like kind of the same character, but they just made it a little different. Um, there are cards like that here in Disney Lorcana that they're already doing with, but as games get older, put out more cards, they kind of have to do stuff like that to be able to do that. I'm not sure if there's going to be like multiple expansions or sets per year. I'd imagine there probably will be, but this is still very new. It's not even launching until September of this year, but we did get the how to play. Um, but it's definitely seems interesting. I think with how kind of simplistic it is, I guess, compared to some other card games and that Disney appeal, I feel like it has a ton of potential to be really, really popular.
Oh yeah. Well, and also just the fact that they're gonna be selling Lorcana like in Disney parks too, um, among other retail stores and different places where you can find card games. But I mean that's huge, just the marketing boost from Disney itself.
Yeah, that's right. I keep forgetting that they're going to be selling these cards at the theme parks and stuff too. Yeah. I really do suspect that like out of all of the card games, this one, if the like Battle Spirit Saga we've talked about, just some of these other like new card games that have come out, even Marvel Snap is really, really popular, but will it stay that way? I don't know. I feel like Lorcana has that also same potential to really like explode and just be a huge, huge game.
Oh yeah.
And now getting to see the rules, I think that honestly, this is even going to be something that people will really enjoy playing, just like with their families or having, like game nights with their friends. It's not necessarily even like looking at this and building up to that 20 lore to win the game. Like, you don't even have to have like a competitive system for this for it to be popular.
True. The IP itself is just it's such a huge draw. There's so many characters that people have, grown up with and know really well. I mean, kids who are watching like new Disney movies or newish, and recognize all these characters they've seen, and then adults playing with their children who are like, "Yeah, I remember this character from when I was a kid." Like it has a very big mass appeal. So the game I think is pretty well set up to have a good base of people to grow with, and we'll get to see how big of a launch they have in September.
Yeah. Yeah, I am very excited. It's also going to be really interesting to see like local game stores and stuff will be able to start getting the game in mid-August, and then September 1st is when it will be like, mass public launch. Um, so they are trying to help out like the local game stores and have that access early and really try to promote it there. But yeah, with it being sold at the Disney theme parks and stuff too, and like I said, some retailers, I'm sure it'll still be online. I'm kind of wondering how popular it will be at local game stores. Maybe it'll be fine at like the bigger game stores, but man, this is one of those like if you live in a smaller place like I do, sucks for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that being an issue. I mean, it's possible that they branch out into the digital aspect of card games too in the future. I mean, the depending on how much Disney wants to get involved and push the product to that could be something that snowballs. But for now, as far as we know, it is going to be the physical only card game, so it'll be very much focused around families and people who are just able to get together in person and play on like a regular basis for the game to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. But I don't know. So I think it looks pretty interesting. I think it looks pretty fun. Um, this is, like I said, even just something that I think could be very similar to just, kind of board games, right? That you buy
Mhm.
at Target or whatever. You buy a board game to have like a board game night on the weekend or whatever, and you play with the kids or friends. I think this is gonna fall into that category just as much as it will for like very competitive TCG players and stuff as well. Especially depending on like what they actually announce for like competitive stuff. But I'm kind of waiting to see what else comes about for the competitive stuff. But yeah, for now, it is going to be a physical card game. I don't know if they'll take this into a digital space, but like you said, like maybe in the future, just and they'll see if this becomes popular. Maybe they'll create a new card game that becomes a digital version. Because like even before Hearthstone, there was a physical World of Warcraft card game.
True.
I don't think it was as popular, but then once they did the digital version, that became immensely popular. But
Is the front runner. I mean, there's still art from lots of Hearthstone cards that are recycled art from that original, World of Warcraft card game. Um, Lorcana could potentially be a front runner to a Disney digital card game, or might just be something that continues in the same lines as like Magic the Gathering Arena, that went online and had success there. So a lot of
yeah,
different possible branching pathways to go, but for now, it's just going to be really interesting to watch as the game develops.
yeah, and I will say as well, kind of like we talked about with Marvel Snap, where you have kind of that IP of Marvel, but the developer is actually Second Dinner, right? That's producing the digital game. Very similar here. You have Disney. It's the Disney IP, the Disney like name, but Ravensburger is the company that is actually doing the like development of the game. Now you might recognize that name if you have seen it before. They are the ones that also did the Disney uh, board games. I'm trying to think of what they're like the Disney villains and the like those board games you might see at Walmart, Target.
Hmm.
Very, very popular. They made like a whole bunch. So it is the same like development company that is making this. So I do also suspect that like with their kind of history of already making Disney games that are popular, I have already kind of said it. It does have a little bit of that feel of kind of just easy to play, like as a just game on its own, like at the dinner table, right?
Yeah.
Very similar to what they've already created, Disney Villainous, I think maybe is what it's called. Yeah, but anyways, so because of all of that, like they already have a lot of history being successful with these games. So I think also that layered into it, I just feel like this is going to be very, very successful.
Yeah, it's a pretty fair assessment. It's hard to count out something like this entering the scene with all the goodwill already built up and the recognizable characters and a whole lot of other things. And with a competent company behind, the making of the game, who knows what they're doing, I think it should stand to do pretty well.
Yeah. The only thing that I feel concerned about is how many cards will be available for purchase, especially at the start.
Yeah.
Because if they're not, the prices could be pretty high if there's kind of not enough for the interest of the game. So I don't want to try to play it if cards are going to be like, super super expensive. But we'll see on that. Market value of cards, especially with this, like you said, you can build your own deck. So the cost of like buying single cards and things like that can be very much like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh and Magic, where you're gonna be able to go to a local game store or online or whatever, eBay marketplaces. People are gonna be selling singles for incredible value, especially at the start when nobody really knows what the value of cards are going to be.
Those back alley Lorcana deals.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, yep. But yeah, pretty interesting. I am excited. So thanks, Ron, for going through that with me.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a fun road to go down and just look at, what's on the horizon. Again, this isn't a game that comes out until September, so we still have a good deal of time to wait, but they're building the hype early. We finally get to see the rules of the game, and, we might kind of maybe even forget about this for a little bit. But then, as we get closer and closer to September, they're going to just start bombarding people with all the shiny new things that you can do. So keep an eye on it. We have our first look of what it's going to be like, and the stage is set for a few months from now.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'd love to hear what you all think as well. If this is something you're gonna try out, is it something that you like the kind of concepts? Let us know.
Absolutely. And with that, that pretty much concludes our show for this week. So thank you for joining us this week. And to what Don was saying as well, if you or someone would be interested in joining us as well, please reach out to us. You can email us at tccgroundtable@protonmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at TCCG Roundtable. Use our top pinned tweet for a link to our Discord, or use the link in the description or show notes. You can check out our video version at Dragon Rider's YouTube channel, Dragon Rider TCCG, and you can find us everywhere you can find audio podcasts. Also, special thank you to our Inked Gaming affiliate, and you can help support us directly while also getting sweet merch like playmats and other card game accessories if you follow the link pinned in our show notes as well. Um, for finding us individually, you can find me at Twitter at Ron_HS. You can find me streaming on Twitch Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern on, of course, Twitch at RonMexico HS, and you can find me on YouTube at RonMexico HS. And Don, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, DonnieDK. That's DAWNIEDK. You can find me on YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, all of that. dragonrider TCCG. I usually stream Tuesday through Friday, starting at 2 p.m. Mountain Time. But sometimes I'll add in like extra Monday streams or streams on the weekends. So definitely would love to have you pop in there. And um, then also talking every week about standard Hearthstone over at Dr. 3HS. And we actually just put out and celebrated our 200th episode. So pretty
That's
excited
right.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
We're on our way with this show. We just have like 170 something
Yeah,
to go.
just a few more to go.
That's awesome though. A big 200. All right, and with that, again, thank you for joining us. That concludes our show. Thank you, and we will see you at the roundtable.